Thank you all for being here. Thanks for letting me come. I'm a candidate for president because I believe that if we fix a few big complex things, nothing will stop this country. I honestly believe it. But we've got challenges, both in terms of how our government operates and our country itself. And one of those is the affliction of addiction. It is a serious problem. I used to be able to, and I think I could still do this, when I was governor, my wife and I went through a very public challenge as a family. My daughter has addiction problems and is in recovery now. Thank God. She's in drug-free. And she's a courageous young woman, and she had to go through a very public challenge. This is the funny thing about public life is that people say, well, we got to make sure that no special treatment is given. And in my daughter's case, she got the benefit of no special treatment. She got extra treatment as it relates to the scrutiny. And it was a difficult time for my wife and for me. And what I learned was that the pain that you feel when you have a loved one who has addiction challenges and kind of spirals out of control is something that is shared with a whole lot of people. And I found I could go in my public life and I could be in a Chamber of Commerce event and someone would look at me with a feeling that I felt. Just I could look them in the eyes and know that as a mom or a dad or a spouse, they were going through the same things that as you love your spouse or you love your child with your heart and soul and they've kind of lost control of their lives, what I realized was there are a whole lot of people that were going through the exact same thing. And I could just see them. I could see them. I was talking about economic development or education reform, and I could see in the crowd people were looking at me knowing that I was going through the same things as a loved one with a challenge. And it was extraordinary. I'll never forget, my daughter graduated from Tallahassee Community College. That was a big deal for us. And that graduation, I went as a proud parent. But the one I'll never forget was the drug court graduation she had in Orlando, Florida. And one person after another, some over 3 months, some over 6 months, some, much quicker than that, had their the adjudication that was withheld, wiped off their slate, and they graduated. They graduated drug-free on the road to recovery. And it was an extraordinary event. All of this informs my belief about how we as a nation need to deal with the affliction that comes from addictions. It is a serious problem, whether it's alcoholism or opiate addiction or heroin addiction. It is a serious, serious problem that creates huge demands on government, and it creates a lack of productivity, and it creates hardship for families, most importantly. And it crosses all ethnic lines, all income lines. It is one of the soft underbellies, I think, of our country. And we need to get on with it. We need to make this a much higher priority than we had. So, in Florida, we did that. We created a coordinated, comprehensive strategy to deal with this great challenge in our state. When I was governor, when I was elected, I said I was going to create a comprehensive strategy. In my first week, the president of the Florida Senate convened a summit of about 400 people, law enforcement officers, drug treatment providers, prevention coalition folks, people in the recovery community, all of them together. And we came together, convened in Tallahassee. It was my second week on the job. And we actually said, it's up to you to create, Gesundheit. It's up to you to create a strategy to deal with this. And it was a bottom-up approach from all around the state. The strategy was written up. I hired a guy named Jim McDonough, one of the great public servants, a colonel in the Army, served in the White House in the Clinton administration in the Office of Drug Control, and came down to run our strategy. And we created a strategy, went to the legislature, funded the languishing treatment programs, built 67 coalitions, prevention coalitions in 67 counties. My wife was the madrina of the prevention movement. Madrina means, godmother, and she was literally called the madrina. And she traveled the state to mobilize the support of the prevention community because it's important. In fact, that's the most important thing. If we can avoid the hardship altogether, this country will be far better off. And that's what she did. We expanded drug treatment by 25% in relatively short order. Just in case you might have forgotten, I'm a conservative. I believe in limited government. I don't think that every problem needs to be solved by more spending, but this was a huge priority, and conservatives and liberals alike believed it to be that way. We expanded drug treatment inside of our prisons. We got our law enforcement community much more engaged and actually talking to the treatment community for the first time, at least that's what they said. And we dealt with the supply side along with the demand side, and each and every year we did something that if you're serious about something, if you don't measure it, you don't care. That's what I believe. We benchmark it. We used the tobacco monies that were pretty abundant back then. I don't know where they stand today, but tobacco monies. We created the largest survey of youth and young adult alcohol and drug use. Every year, we would take this sample. I think it got up to 50,000 people. We identified how we were doing based on those surveys. We adjusted our strategy each and every year. We didn't say, okay, now we passed a law and that's it. We actually were all in. We continued to build on the success of the first year, and each and every year, the strategy was updated, and the net result was we saw dramatic reductions in alcohol use, in tobacco use, of course, because that was, we had to show respect for that since some of the funding that we got was related to that, and in the use of illegal drugs. Law enforcement played a huge role in this as well, in coordinating where it was necessary. I don't know if you remember the rave club deal. I don't know if it happened here in New Hampshire. In Florida, it was one of the centers of the importation of these extraordinarily dangerous drugs that people thought were really cool to take. And kids would take these drugs, they'd go dance all night, they thought it was really a really interesting, wonderful thing to do. Well, it destroys your brain, for starters. It's illegal, secondly. It was the wrong thing to think was cool. In our culture, we changed. We had a thing called Operation Heat Rave. We coordinated a law enforcement exercise to shut down every one of those heat rave clubs, which were creating dangerous impacts for young people, thinking it was safe to do it. So what I'm telling you is, any strategy requires an all-in approach. It requires mobilizing all sectors of this effort. There is no one simple answer. Treatment by itself isn't going to solve this problem. Creating stronger recovery communities, which is what I've learned on my journey as a candidate for president from people at the Hope for New Hampshire efforts. And Melissa, I just appreciate your efforts in teaching me this. The recovery movement by itself is not going to solve this, and certainly law enforcement isn't going to solve this by itself, but working together, it can certainly happen. So what's the role of the federal government? Yesterday I outlined a strategy that's quite similar to the ones that I'm sure you're talking about here, and very similar to the successful strategy we had when I was governor, which focuses on prevention, treatment, law enforcement, and having the federal government play a partnership role, not a top-down, here's how we're going to do it role. SAMHSA is a great organization. We worked with them a lot when I was governor, and my wife was on one of their advisory boards. It's a great organization, but it can be a lot better and a lot more outcomes-based in terms of which programs they fund. And I pledge to you, if I'm President of the United States, not just SAMHSA, but the other programs where billions of dollars are spent, there's going to be an outcome measurement, because you can't just spend money and not get a good result. The taxpayers of this country are not going to accept that. They demand excellence in government just as we do as consumers. We demand higher quality products. The services that the federal government provides needs to be as high quality as well. We need to engage law enforcement. One of the reasons why people now are supplanting legal prescription drugs, opiates, for supplanting heroin, using heroin instead, is that the abundance of heroin is extraordinary and the cost is extraordinarily low. And its power is sadly very, very potent. And so the responsibility of the federal government has to be to coordinate with local law enforcement and with your great sheriff here in this county, but across the region, to make sure that the HIDAs are intense and focused, and making sure that there's interdiction efforts to deal with the people that are making tons of money on the backs of people that are really struggling. And at the border, we better start closing the border and shutting it down so that these potent drugs don't continue to poison our communities. I believe we can solve this, but it has to be from the bottom-up approach. My personal belief is that America does best from the bottom up. and that the federal government should be a partner for successful programs rather than telling which line you're supposed to get in and which form you're supposed to fill out. What we should do is go back to the community-based model that has always been successful. And in doing so, we will yield a far better result. And as part of that strategy, I would suggest that every state expand drug courts, just as we did in Florida. The first drug court in the country was started in Dade County with Janet Reno when she was state attorney many, many years ago. And under my watch, we expanded it across the entire state. And I think that has to be part of a comprehensive strategy as well. We need to be a second chance nation. We need to recognize that restoring people's chance to be able to live a life of purpose and meaning doesn't just deal with the illness of drug addiction. It also deals with giving them a chance to get a job and to do the other things. And drug courts provide that opportunity. It provides a stick, because if you don't follow the rules that the judge lays out, well, you're going to actually have to fulfill the sentence that you were convicted of or you were about to be prosecuted on. But if you do finish it, you get your rights back and you can start on your life's journey again. That's how America works at its very best, and I think all of this together is the proper approach to deal with this. The final thing I'll say is that, look, this is apart from the personal, sadness that anybody that's gone through this, which is, incredibly difficult and challenging, this is a national calling. It has to be locally driven, inspired by people acting on their heart, for whatever reason it is, to be able to get involved. But this should be a much higher priority. We should figure out a way to talk about this without all the stigmas attached to it. That's one of the challenges is, when you think about causes, people migrate towards the ones that, a hospital that's taking care of, a community hospital that's taking care of people that are sick, or the galas that exist. The challenge is, people migrate towards the causes that are kind of uplifting. This should be an uplifting cause. This should be a cause that people really feel good about, that they're involved in. We need to eliminate the stigmas and the barriers so more and more people get engaged in this, where they're not embarrassed to say that I have an illness that I now am in the road of recovery on, or that I have a child who has a problem. And if we do that, we fulfill one of the great promises of this country, which is imagine a United States with 300+ million people where everybody can reach their God-given abilities. And drug addiction is one of the things that holds people back, for sure. Alcohol addiction does the same. The challenges inside of family life because of it are enormous. If we can deal with this, we can solve any problem in the world, and we'll lead the world. Thank you all very much. You want me to help you with that? You sure?
Thank you so much.
It's impressive.
If we could do this interview standing up, but I think...
Well, what do you think? My wife is 5 foot tall, and I've been married to her for a long while, and I love her more than I could describe to you all, and she told me that there's an inverse relationship between height and intelligence. So we can do it any way you want.
Please sit.
Yes, ma'am.
See, I'm 5 feet tall, but I have really big shoes on today.
They're nice-looking shoes.
Thank you. Welcome back to New Hampshire. Even the New Hampshire people are complaining about how cold it is today.
It's beautiful, though. It's actually extraordinarily pretty out there, so be happy.
So we have questions for you that were submitted by attendees, co-hosts, and local organizations. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. This one is submitted by the National Council for Behavioral Health. Currently, we're only serving about 10 to 15% of those in need of treatment, which is the lowest penetration of any disease or medical condition. As families struggle to find places for their loved ones to get treatment for addictions, community-based treatment centers struggle with how to sustain their services with low rates and limited funding. How do you propose to support and expand these safety net providers to meet the overwhelming demand for services?
Well, first of all, in my remarks, I should have mentioned that this is complex as it relates to diagnosis and treatment. I'm just as a dad, kind of chasing after, finding solutions to this. It is one of the most confounding, confusing, frustrating experiences I've ever had. And I'm kind of nerdy about, I'm curious about things, and I like to find solutions to things. And drug addiction and mental health challenges typically go hand in glove, at least in my experience. There's a lot of people that have dual diagnosis, which makes this even more complex. Because the mind, the brain, hasn't had the same kind of commitment. We have not made the same commitment to the discoveries of the neurological challenges. Some people are probably more prone to get addicted to alcohol and drugs than other people, and it relates to just their neurological makeup. And we have not done a good enough job just on research and development to explore the brain. Because inside of that brain, locked in that incredible computer, is the solutions to dementia, which is going to be a huge problem, to alcoholism, to drug addiction, to many other things. So I forgot to mention that. I think there is a research element to this as well, and it would be quite helpful as it relates to how these dual diagnosis challenges can be dealt with, and how treatment needs to constantly be adapting to the new technologies and new discoveries that hopefully we're going to find. I think the best way to expand services, I mentioned the bottom-up approach. I think that's important. Sometimes the incumbents get their, to use a North Florida expression, they get their snouts closer to the front of the trough where the high-grade slop is. You guys say that up here? It doesn't look like you do. But that's what they do. They kind of become incumbents. They get large. They get bureaucratic. They hire the lobbyists. They get the compliance officers. They can fill out the forms. They can do all this stuff, and it makes it harder for the challengers, if you will, the startups that might have better ideas on how to deal with treatment to even get started. And so one of the things I think is important is to constantly be aware of eliminating the bureaucracies and focus on outcomes. And take some chances along the way. Government is way too risk adverse. I always found this when we tried to do something different and it didn't happen, man, just like all hell broke loose. The newspapers, what an idiot for trying this and stuff. And my job was always to have the back of the people who were trying to innovate and say, hey, okay, we didn't get it right this time. We're going to try it again. That's the approach that we need. And then we need more funding where it's outcome-based. So if you have success, why would you not fund more of it? Because it saves a ton of money down the road, I can promise you that, and just in terms of the criminal justice system and the interaction inside the courts. You go, like I did, go sit in a family court, in a child welfare court. In fact, there probably is one judge here in Manchester might be exclusively focused on that. Do it. Go sit with him or her and see how it plays out. And what you'll find is drug addiction is a common denominator in spousal abuse, in all sorts of child abuse. And so imagine if we moved closer to a drug-free community, you're saving a lot of money. So I think funding success and constantly challenging the incumbents that may not be as successful, if it doesn't get the desired results, we shouldn't fund it. The best way to get a better result is not funding failure and funding success.
Next question is submitted by Partnership for Drug-Free Kids. To end the opioid epidemic, our best solution is to prevent addiction from beginning in the first place. What types of prevention strategies would you promote in your presidency?
Same ones I did as governor. I would unleash Columba Garnica de Bush on the subject. And she did a pretty darn good job. She traveled the state, mobilized and encouraged, got these coalitions that were, some of them which were well established, like in the big cities like Miami-Dade, but others didn't exist at all. She encouraged them, nurtured them, got them more engaged. We brought resources to them because typically they're underfunded, and it worked. The other thing that she did that I think is important is we connected with the schools. And my wife's passions is arts in general, but arts and education. And we got a lot of the arts and education community to get involved in this as well, because it was actually pretty good therapy for people, for kids that had problems. It was really an interesting I had no clue about this stuff. This is why one of the real advantages I have that other people I look at that are thinking of running, the big dogs on the stage that know it all and got it all figured out is I learned long enough ago to know what I don't know, and it's a huge advantage because when you don't know, you know what you don't know, you actually then can go seek out the truth. You can actually, if you have enough curiosity, you can get really smart on things. And so I got smarter on this just watching my wife in action, and I think that is one of the things that could be the public roles of people in high-profile public life. You can focus on a lot of things, and I think having a first lady that is focused on this, along with her husband, could be helpful, I think.
Your next question comes from the DEA Educational Foundation.
Which?
DEA.
Oh, really?
His name's Bill.
Bill.
I was speaking with a representative from an AG's office in a Midwestern state recently. He believed that the Mexican drug cartels were a much bigger threat to the U.S. than ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban combined. Nearly 48,000 drug overdose deaths occurred in the United States in 2014. What would you do to reduce this ever-growing threat?
Well, Bill, I don't know if you're here, but I would respectfully disagree with the assertion, not that the drug cartels aren't a huge challenge. I just think ISIS, the threats on Western civilization are real, and I wouldn't discount them to make that case, but that's just me. Having said that, we have to engage with Mexico in a partnership to not just encourage them, but demand that they take stronger action. They've made good progress, but there's so much more to do. And controlling the border is obviously, if you're concerned about national security, like I am, if you're concerned about ISIS, then you need to secure the border. If you're concerned about an open border as it relates to low-cost heroin making its way to New Hampshire, you have a common interest, need to secure the border. If you're concerned about public health challenges in general, we need to secure the border. If you're concerned about the rule of law, that people come here illegally at the expense of people that patiently wait, and I think that's another element of this. You should be focused on better strategies to secure the border. And we can do this. We've done it. You know where most of the illegal drugs came into the country 15 years ago? Florida. People kind of have already forgotten about the Medellin drug cartel. And the Colombians, back in the age, they also imported heroin, but it was back when cocaine was the drug of choice. Most of that drug flow came through South Florida and Florida in general. And two things happened. One, the federal government worked in partnership with the state, and they stopped the flow, literally. Stopped it because the Navy and the Coast Guard forward leaned into the Caribbean. And we had great cooperation with our efforts and local South Florida law enforcement. The net effect of that, along with Uribe's effort to wipe out the drug cartel in Colombia, which was quite effective, was that it moved to Mexico, and now we have this land bridge that is the big challenge. And I think we need to replicate the success that the United States had in stopping the flow of drugs into Florida 10, 15 years ago, and similarly, Colombia's great success when Alvaro Uribe was president to shut down the drug cartel. We need to cooperate just as we did with Colombia.
So what has happened between then and now to make it so much worse that we're talking epidemics?
I don't know if we've had, sadly, I think we've had many more overdoses, but drug addiction has been with us for a long while. I'm not sure that it's necessarily, a family member that was suffering with drug addiction in 2005 suffered the same suffering than 10 years later. So it's bad. It's been bad across the board. I think that what it's harder to control the border, a land border that long, but we haven't done the task yet. That's clear, and that's got to be the first priority of the federal government. The rest of partnering all that, I think they're more than capable of handling. But the thing that you have to have is a federal government that's committed to enforcing the immigration laws and our border.
Okay. Next question is submitted by Faces and Voices of Recovery. Providing alcohol and drug abuse treatment and community-based recovery support services instead of jail has proven to be one of the surest ways to put drug-dependent adults on the path to recovery. Also to prevent juveniles with drug problems from becoming adult criminals. Do you agree with providing treatment and recovery support as an alternative to incarceration? And also, do you support treating addiction as a public health issue, not a criminal justice issue?
I don't agree that it's singularly a public health issue at the expense of saying that it's not. It's also a criminal justice. I think it's both. I think you're going to lose support if you try to say it's one or the other. I think we need a totally comprehensive approach on it. So to answer the second part of the question, and I do think that we need to have alternatives to incarceration. Here's an interesting fact. Well, in Florida, I mentioned what we did through drug courts, which was, I think, continues to be a model for other parts of the country. The investment in that, the spending to build the infrastructure for drug courts, it's extensive, but the net effect is you're reducing incarceration costs dramatically, and those are far higher per person. So I think that makes sense. Here's the interesting fact that this whole effort to penalize people that were using drugs or selling drugs has created a federal prison population that where 50% of all federal prisoners are there for drug-related crimes. 50%. I don't know what it is in New Hampshire. In Florida, it's like 20%, maybe even lower than that now. And that 50% number, I think, is way too high. We have minimum mandatory sentences for users that I think needs to be reevaluated. For dealers, they ought to be put away forever, as far as I'm concerned. I have no problems with that. But users, I think we have to be a second chance country. We have to have restorative justice in that regard. And here's a place where the left and right have actually converged together. Interesting that Washington is so dang dysfunctional that even when they agree, they can't get things done. The president has now decided he's going to use his executive powers of clemency to reduce sentences for people, which is fine. But why shouldn't he go to Congress and work with conservatives that believe what I just stated, that believe that we ought to figure out a way to reduce these minimum mandatory sentences? Wouldn't that be a better solution where actually cats and dogs could live in perfect harmony just for a brief moment when they agree on something? I mean, it is ridiculous. And as president, you have a responsibility to find common ground with people that may not agree with you on much, but on that one particular thing they do. What we need to have is a pause button and say, hey, I just heard you say you agree with me and I agree with you. Maybe we should go do something about it. And then move on to the big food fight on something else where you don't agree. But at least on the stuff we agree, and this is one of those convergences, someone needs to strike when the iron's hot.
Next question is from ASAM. There are now a number of ASAM, I don't know. Does someone know what that is? American Society for Addiction Medicine.
Thank you.
There are now a number of effective treatments for opioid addiction, but there are often restrictions on access to these treatments. As president, what would you do to increase the appropriate use of these medications?
I don't know enough about the subject, so back to the point of knowing what I don't know. I don't know. So whoever has that question, you can talk to me afterwards, or you can email me at, please don't record this. What the hell? Jeb@jeb.org, and teach me. I don't know what the addiction medicines. You're the guy?
There's a limit of 100 patients for anybody that's certified for buprenorphine. We can't see any more than that, or the DEA comes down on us. And it's part of the Data 2000 law, and there are bills in Congress now to remove the cap for certain physicians, so that they can have greater access. In our practice, we could add another 1,000 to 2,000 patients, but we can't right now because of the cap.
Certainly worth. Sounds like it's worth considering for sure. You don't have to email me. Oh, you can if you like.
So, still speaking of some of the prescriptions, do you support increased funding for and the expansion of the use of naloxone, the overdose reversal drug?
I do, and I wouldn't have known anything about this had I not been a candidate for president, coming here and talking to law enforcement officers. We had a roundtable discussion, Sheriff, about a month and a half ago where this came up all the time, and I do support it based on the saving of lives. It's been extraordinary here.
I guess just a final question. I know that we've all got some time constraints today.
I don't. I'm happy to stay.
Oh, you can stay. Great. Great. However, when you did decide to run for president, you knew, of course, you'd be spending plenty of time here in New Hampshire, but did you ever think, like many of us, did you ever think that this would be such an issue right here in New Hampshire?
No, I didn't, and it was my first official trip, I think, maybe the second one, where it hit me like a brick wall, where at the hotel that we normally stay in, 2 people had loved ones that died of an overdose in the last 6 months, and I met 2 other people that had a similar experience in that same day. I mean, 4 people who had that look that I described, but imagine losing, I'm sure, you know, there may be people in this room that have had this experience, losing a loved one from an overdose like that. And if that doesn't awaken you to the fact that this is a serious issue, it can't all just, look, anecdotes matter. Your own personal life experience matters a lot. It can't all be about some kind of esoteric policy. If you don't have a heart for people after going through that experience and seeing the look on their faces, they describe it to you, you know, you don't have a whole lot of humanity. So my experience, and now, by the way, so you don't feel like you're alone in New Hampshire, this is a national problem now. It may have risen dramatically in New Hampshire first, but it is a national problem. And it's a huge problem in the Midwest. And if you take the whole spectrum of drug abuse, whether it's methamphetamines, cocaine, heroin, alcohol, a lot of the prescription drugs, which we haven't talked about, I mean, that is a problem by itself. It's not just a gateway drug to heroin. It's a problem. We're overprescribing way too much. Put aside, I mean, the gateway element of this is bad, but my daughter got into problems with a prescription drug. It wasn't an illegal drug. And one of the solutions to this, by the way, the interconnectivity between legal prescribed drugs and illegal use is prescription drug databases. And I would hope that New Hampshire would follow the lead of Florida that had a dramatic reduction in prescription drug abuse when we could monitor prescription shoppers, doctor shoppers, pharmacy shoppers, pharmacists that might be overprescribing to make more money, doctors, the small fraction of doctors that are doing this for material gain, that are poisoning communities. If you have the accurate data, you can protect privacy rights, and you can use it as an effective tool to dramatically reduce this. These pill mills in South Florida that we had were horrible. We were the worst in the country, and thanks to the Attorney General in our state in the last 3 years, it's literally been wiped out. So the reason why I think treatment and law enforcement need to go hand in glove is that's how you solve this problem. You solve it both on the supply side and on the use side. And so a comprehensive strategy seems to me to be the best way to go.
Governor Bush, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care.